Okay, hi, Terza TV here, and I want to say sorry. It's been a while since I posted a video. That was not my intent. It was not, there was no vacation. Uh, there were some things that happened in my family that kind of sucked all the air out of the room, and then there was, I took a hit that I applied my own scale to, uncomfortable, hurt, injured, and it was somewhere in between hurt and injured, probably more towards hurt, but it's taken time to kind of heal and get to the point where I can be comfortable with it. Uh, it it's hard. It was hard to lift things, and occasionally now it's hard to lift things. So that being said, that's why you haven't seen me in a while. The other thing I want to talk about is what's coming up this week. Um, I finally got the energy up to do a video that I'm kind of dreading, but I think is really important. I'm going to show you the practice that I do to improve my work, and this is very much a find the level you operate at and then excel in that level. This is not like what I used to do when I was much younger and practicing all the time. It's a different focus. This is a lot more emotionally and physically gentle than previous iterations. But the problem with it is, I have to make myself vulnerable to show this. This is a kind of a private struggle, and you're going to see it, full bore. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty, but having a disability, having a mobility disability where the gait looks different can be tough. And I am gung-ho. I'm all for equality and disabled rights and things like that, but it's one thing to be for it, and it's another thing to go, oh wait, you want to see my version of this, or I want to use my version of this to educate people, and it's not always comfortable. So you're going to see my range of motion or lack thereof, balance issues, which you've seen already, but it's going to be really apparent because it's part of the work. So that's coming up this week. I've got a couple of ideas on how I want that to look. The hard part of the ideas is I need to find a way to incorporate Mr. Winston into it, his usual thing. It's kind of hard to thematically do that in this case. And that brings us to the topic that I want to discuss today. A viewer actually asked a really good question. He said, can you do an episode on training by yourself? And I went, yeah, sure, I can do that. I can training by yourself, and but I've got some other stuff I want to do ahead of it, and this seems like a perfect good time to actually do it. So training by yourself, training solo, it's hard. One of the benefits of training with someone is you get accountability. You also get other eyes on your motions. It is very easy to fall into a bad habit and keep it, and then train that habit in. So, but you can do it. Now, disclaimer, I now train a lot on my own, but I had instruction, and I'm falling back on that instruction to inform how I train. And in a lot of ways, and this is an idea that I want to put out to people, all training is technically on your own. So you go to a dojo, or a sal, or a Kowloon, or dojang, whatever you call your school, the octagon. You go there and you receive instruction. And instruction is not training. Instruction is what you need to do. Training is taking those ideas and honing them into a useful implement. So, when you go to class and you're in a class and they show you how to do a reverse punch, and you do your reverse punch, well, you do it once. You don't know the reverse punch. You've done a reverse punch, and you're not going to know the reverse punch until you do it over and over again. That is training. And training you should be doing on your own. You should be, in a space that you delineate as your practice space and working on that. You should be, okay, So when I bring my fist up, is my fist low? Is my fist high? Is it by my floating ribs? Is it resting on the swell of my belly? Like mine right now is resting on that nice convenient little swell of my belly that goes out past my rib cage. And when I bring it out, where do I rotate? These are all things that you figure out by doing it. And then you go back to class and, go through the kata or whatever, and your instructor goes, no, fix this, 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 and this. They give you a list, and you go home and you work on it. And you go through the kata again, and that's training. Training is repetition. Training is going through kata, and all of that kind of stuff on your own. You practice on your own. Now, yes, when you go to class, there are parts where you're in line doing the kata, or you're sparring and your teacher's telling you, giving you feedback on your technique, going, no, do it again. But he's not going, no, do it again to cement it into your being. He's going, no, do it again so you can figure out what you're doing wrong, and they give you little tidbits to work on. They can't do it for you. If you were not training on your own, they would be programming it into you. Like, okay, we're gonna type those commands in, and you're gonna step to the right and then strike. But that's not how it works. So technically, training is all on your own. I just want to get that out of the way before I address, the reality of what the question is: can you train solo completely? I don't know. I've never been able to. But what I can do is take the things that I've been taught that are internalized, and I can work on those. Like when I practice Terza, I have the 10 drills. I know there are 12, Aaron, I'm sorry, but I can never get a hang of 11 and 12. So I do the 10 drills that I know over and over again, doing repetitions and thinking about, what is this? What is the implication of this? How do I implement this into my practice? And I'll tell you, a lot of the revelations that I've had about how to move with a sword have come out of that repetition. My teacher did not tell me, oh, your hip, you move your hip this way and this happens. My teacher told me, you don't have enough hip in what you're doing. You need to really work on that. And I did, and I found out what he meant. And, by the way, Aaron, thank you. Aaron is one of my teachers who is probably watching this shaking his head going, I like the lighting, but you're just a little much. Anyhow, so what it helps to do is to have a mentor, an instructor, someone you can rely on to critique your training. Okay? You need someone that you can look up to and go, hey, how am I doing? And if they're a good instructor, if they're a good teacher, they'll let you know. And you go, oh, you're doing great, man, but you need to work on this, and this. By the way, a good instructor can give you the thumbs up and then snatch it right away. It's one of those things where you're like, oh boy, I'm gonna be, and the thing that you thought you were working on, didn't work out. So that's one aspect. Another aspect of it is, sparring, and I actually like sparring. I am a huge advocate for form work and kata and all of that, but I'm also a huge advocate of floor time, where you're like, okay, can we make this work? And, floor time, if you're doing it right, will inform you of what you can do and can't do, and what you are doing and what you think you're doing or completely not doing. It's like Daffy Duck going, I'm going to fix this little red wagon. And then he comes back 10 minutes later. I fixed it. The wheels were squeaky and the axle was bent. The paint was chipped, but I got it all together, you know. That's what sparring allows you to do, you know, because you can test your kung fu and go, you know, is my kung fu good? And, you know, it may be good, but it may not be equal to the task of this individual who can read you like a book and cuts left or cuts right when you are going straight and to the side of the head, you know, whatever. But for proper training, you have to kind of keep a running tally in your head about what works and what doesn't work. And at this point, I'm going to mention something that I heard from online from Tom Leone, who is the translator of one of the translators of Fabrice. Does a lot of rapier work. I think his school is the Seven Hearts School. He's an interesting individual. He said just because you can't do it doesn't mean it doesn't work. And so, you know, that's also part of training. You know, where is it falling apart? And you need to be able to analyze what's working and what's not, you know, what you can do and what you can't do. And that's where a teacher comes in. Because the teacher is that ruthless set of eyes that goes, nope, not a berserk, not going to happen. By the way, anybody who gets that reference, good for you. If not, go watch Eric the Viking. So, by the way, Eric the Viking is a very good movie, very important. So training on your own is critical, you know, because most of what you do is training on your own. But you have to be open to what that training teaches you and what that training tells you. You know, I do a combination of slow and fast, and I do more slow than fast. I do the fast to prove that I can and to kind of hone my brain on that concept. I do slow because it's really easy to go fast and do bad things without even noticing. So, you know, it's a little trick that I have that Aaron taught me, you know, that I like. So, yeah. So you need a mentor. You need a second set of eyes. You need someone you can trust. You need someone who isn't just teaching you how to lose to them. You know, you need someone who is open to critique. Now, when I talk about critique, and this is the next part of it, critique and critical thinking, this is something to really keep in mind, because a lot of people hear critique, I'm being critiqued, that's negative. People are pointing out the bad things. I'm approaching it from an art perspective, because, you know, I'm a artist. Photography, painting, ceramics, video. You know, I've got a lot of schooling and all this stuff. Art education as well. You know, I teach kids, and I got to tell you, one of my claims to fame is I got a room full of sixth graders doing a proper critique of each other's artwork without slagging on each other. And that's kind of what you need. You need a proper critique of what you're doing without slagging on you. Now, what we did in that was we talked about the positive things. What are the things you like in the piece? What speaks to you? Point out 3 things that really work. Now, let's talk about what doesn't work. And we're not allowed to say, I don't like it, or, you know, it's junk or anything like that. What we have to do is we have to offer a substance thing so that, you know, the person you're critiquing can benefit from it. And they'll do the same thing for you, and you build up, you know, basically a trusting relationship. So critique, an honest critique, is really important. And I mean, you know, we've talked about grandfatherly kindness before. That's a different critter. That's an outright, you are on the wrong path. Here is the corrective. Here is the corrective thing. A critique is you know, your compadres, your brethren, your buddies, you know, your battle buddy, you know, whatever you want to call it, the person you trust to let you know. So those are essential for training on your own. And then let's talk about the 8-ton elephant in the middle of the room. You have to do it. you can say you're training on your own. You can go to, you can go to your fight practice, your sparring practice, whatever, and not train. You can go and fight people, and you'll win and lose based on a bunch of factors that have nothing to do with your training. Speed, someone else's speed, timing, all that stuff. We all have an innate sense of some of it. The people that practice hone it, but we all have an innate sense of timing. If you want proof of that, pick up a ball. I'm going to pay for this. I can toss Winston up in the air and I can catch him. That's timing. If I didn't have timing, Winston would be all over the place. And as you can see, this is not going to go well. Okay, buddy, have a seat. So, we all have an innate sense of timing and hand-eye coordination. I'm not going to use Winston, but, I can take an object and I can throw it to my other hand. This is hand-eye coordination. I'm actually looking at it going, yeah, okay. My hands move in conjunction with my coordination. So we all have an inherent sense of that. We all do that. If you can walk, you have coordination. So you can very easily go to a practice, spar, and not get anything out of it. You can't actually call that training. You're not changing anything. You're just taking advantage of the factors that are present. I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind when you consider training by yourself. You see this room here. It's my set, but you'll see there's a bicycle that I haven't ridden this year yet because I live in Syracuse and they're talking about snow next week. It's 80 today, but there's possibility of snow. But you see all the weapons on the rack, and so and such and so and so. I train with those things. I pick them up. I practice actions repeatedly with those items. Sometimes I'm doing strikes. Sometimes I'm doing cuts. Sometimes I'm doing draws. Sometimes I'm standing, holding a sword, letting the weight kind of settle me and whatnot. But, you do that over and over again. Other things that I do in here are kata. I go and I, ippome, nihome, sanhome, gohome, go through the kata. Then there's drilling. Okay, I want to go from second to fourth. Go into guard, second to fourth. I'll drill that. I drill. I work through those actions, which is different than kata. Kata is as my friend says, a stylized combat for the purpose of instruction. A drill is plugging a hole. I need to work on this thing. I'm going to drill that thing until it fits. Maybe a cavatone. Work the drill, so on and so forth. So, training has to be a purposeful act. It has to be something that you have a routine, you establish a routine, you work through the routine, and that can be hard because we're back to the original point in this section, which is you have to actually do it. You actually have to stand up, start, go, at the pace you set, go, close, stop, wait, pick it up again, could be a day later, practice, go, so on and so forth, rinse, repeat, go, rinse, repeat, go. It has to become a routine. Musashi famously said, and everybody quotes this, and I always get this quote wrong, and I really apologize, said, every day of practice is a defeat of the person you were. Tomorrow is the defeat of lesser men. I love that quote because it's pretty deep. But it's true. If every day you practice, you are better than you were. And if you keep practicing, you'll be better than who you are tomorrow. Eventually, you work through it. But you have to be methodical about it. You have to know what you need to work on. And you need to know how to combat your own inner boredom, because believe me, it happens. Uh, One of my teachers said to me, kata is what you do when you're working on something. And the beautiful thing about kata that I found is I can pick any number of things to work on and do the same motions in the same kata. It's just how I'm applying it, or what I'm thinking about or concentrating on. Like, so when I go through Ipome with kata 1, I go through Ipome, maybe I'm working on not going too far, in my positioning, or maybe I'm working on turning my hip instead of moving my arm. Maybe I want to get rising and falling action. It's the same kata, but my focus on it is different. So that's another aspect. You got to be really on the stick, and you've got to be really focused, as a person. Self-training is not for everybody. Now, implicit in that question is, can you go so far as to pick up a book, open a book, read a book, and go, oh, that technique is this? I've seen one guy do it. I mean, no kidding. He got a copy of Agrippa. He read Agrippa, and next week was doing Agrippa, or 2 weeks. But he's a phenomenal person. He pays attention. The techniques are in there, but the trap is, it's your interpretation. There's a myth that Musashi had no formal training, which they're pretty much finding out isn't true. He studied under his father, probably studied under his father Munsai, who was known for fighting, like a sai with one prong used to disarm swordsmen, and stick fighting. And so, in fact, Musashi's famous duel, was it the Yoshioka Ryu? Munsai had beat the founder of that once before, which is partially why Musashi went and challenged, the current head of the school. And, so the myth of no formal training and really good, I don't know. Like I said, I've met one guy who picked up a book and could figure it out. But that guy had teachers that instructed him, but he clearly took the web and foundation of what he was taught and applied it to it. So, I know other people that are geniuses with deciphering kata. They can look at a kata, take it apart, and voila, they figure out things. In fact, I'm working on a documentary about kata where somebody talks about that. And I may post snippets of it coming up, of that interview, because it's actually really, really good. So the answer is, yeah, maybe, kinda, it's hard. It's definitely hard. So to sum up, the guide for doing that kind of thing would be, focus on what you need, constantly do diagnostics on what you need, check your work via sparring and mentors, and go to practice. Stay in school, kids, that kind of thing. Whenever possible, and with the breadth and scope of martial arts and the world, finding instruction is not the barrier it used to be. My advice would be to find instruction and stick to it and learn it. No matter what style it is. I mean, advanced underwater battle basket weaving has value if you train You know, learning the foundations of an art, any art, if you put real work into it, you will get real out of it. You know, you may get pounded, but you have foundational skills, you know, moving, timing, knowing your distance, and things like that. You know, this is one reason why I don't prescribe the idea that there's a best martial art. You know, there are practitioners. And, you know, I mean, for example, Aikido is getting really beat up on right now, you know, because MMA is saying that Aikido is no good. You know what? I sparred with an Aikido guy who tossed me around like a rag doll, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. And I had a sword, and I was an accomplished fencer at the time of this altercation. The guy got a hold of me, and I wasn't, you know, going along with it. I was resisting, and it didn't matter because down I went. Often with both feet in the air, which was kind of fascinating. Thank God for grass. So, you know, my experience with Aikido as a UK, you know, the guy getting tossed, says otherwise. Now that's one or two rounds, you know, or, you know, one or two altercations. Doesn't mean that I'm an expert in that art, or that you know, what people say about it is wrong. But what it does tell you is that training in something is training in something. And, you know, you learn and you drill and you practice, you will get something out of it. The act of doing it is the benefit. The technique is window dressing on the work. So that's training on your own. As always, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. I'd like to, again, apologize for this being the first video in a while, and, you know, we'll try to stay on top of things. By the way, I really like the lighting today. I'm kind of impressed. This is like the Caravaggio chiaroscuro version of Terza TV. In the next week, probably Friday, there will be another video which will, you know, highlight the training regime that I use. That's, you know, I don't want you to think it's like this P90X inspired sweat fest. It's get up and move. All right. Anyway, you have a good night, and I'll see you in the list.